Costco, you know.
That was cheap.
All right. We'll call it order. Sounds like we're here. Let the record show. Thank you, Lynn, for the delicious muffins. We'll start with any public comments or general announcements. Anyone have anything? If not, we can move on to the minutes. All right, let's move to the minutes.
All right, let's bring up the minutes.
Thank you, Dave.
I don't know if this matters, but under 6 for Vermont Mass Naturalist Funding Proposal, VMN, like you could take out the is, but I don't know, do grammatical things really matter? The meaning's there.
Oh, for VMN is requesting financial support?
Yeah.
What would it be? VMN. Oh, is requested. Yeah, sorry, I see.
Yeah, is requesting.
Yeah.
Is requesting. Or just
requested. VMN requested.
What bullet are you referring to?
The second,
Second
first
bullet.
bullet, second sub bullet?
Sub bullet, yeah.
Is requesting.
6.1.2.
Yeah. I can fix that.
Okay. Any other comments on the minutes?
No, as usual, they were an excellent level of detail,
Yeah.
but not too much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I get a motion to approve the minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes with that one change.
Thanks, Laura.
A second.
Lynn? All approved? Aye. 4 here. Making a quorum happen. Right? 4?
Yep.
4 is the winner.
4 is here. Yeah, I know Eric can't make it today for traveling, and I think
I did not get an indication that Kim wasn't going to be here. But that's okay.
yeah, Kim may be late.
Okay. So we do have a pretty full agenda. There's 2 permits for discussion, as well as pretty substantial. I'm not sure if we'll need the whole 30 or 40 minutes for the budget discussion, but I'm guessing that the applicants probably couldn't start showing up until after 8 o'clock.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Bill Erskine is planning to attend in person. That's what I last heard, and Steve Hayes will be attending online. If we could start them a little early, we certainly can.
Yeah. All right.
I set that timing just because I didn't want to shortchange the budget conversation.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we need to have a pretty robust discussion on that. It's unfortunate Eric won't be here for that one. Hopefully Kim will join us a little bit.
I think Kim just arrived.
Oh, great. So let's start with the first update. I also asked Dave if you could give us an update on the Brownell Mountain fire. I don't know if you were able to get in touch with
So I reached out. I've not yet gotten in touch. But I reached out to the fire department to see if I could get a little more information about the Brownell Mountain fire. And I hope to be, the fire chief is away at the moment. So I hope to be in touch with the fire chief at some point to learn a little bit more. Right now, I don't know anything more than anyone else, but printed in the Observer article, which seemed to indicate that it was on private land. So I'm interested to confirm that, to see if the full footprint was on private land, where it was, and then additionally, if there are any lessons that can be learned regarding our management out there. I also think it would be it's sort of a very interesting opportunity if it is on any public land, just to understand how fire will impact the landscape out there and the ecology. So it's notable from multiple perspectives, so I'll try to find out more information in terms of how it impacts our conservation and management out there.
It was like someone caused it. It was.
I do not know.
Okay.
I don't think the Observer article was clear about that either.
On the news, they were like, they did the story, and then at the end, they were like, reminder that it's a no burn time.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And there have been other fires in Vermont that were directly tied to Camp Fire, and it certainly, there were no storms.
The
So
lightning wasn't happening, and so yeah, we'll see what happens.
certainly,
In my
Could be.
previous academic life, I studied wildland fire planning a lot. And my closest project to here was in Altona, New York. And there was a fire there in 2020 that was started from sunlight through glass.
wow.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's dry.
It's a jack pine, or it's a totally different, it's a fire prone, fire adapted ecosystem, but it was like hot and dry. And yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, we know there's infrastructure up there,
Right.
top of the mountain.
Yeah.
So seems reasonable that someone caused it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say of all the locations and ecosystems and conservation areas in Williston that could potentially benefit from fire ecologically, it probably would be something like Brown Owl Mountain. But that all remains to be seen, and certainly that's
I accidentally
wildfire.
took the keys to the other car. So I may have to bring them home. I just texted them, see if he knows where.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Backup, sorry.
Okay, so moving on real quick.
Yeah.
So we had the sign that we ordered come in. Ooh. So this is the
Yeah, there's muffins if you want.
finished product.
Thank you.
I encourage you to take a look. It's very light. That's one of the benefits of using a wood alternative. I did manage to find this an older previous generation sign that was printed. So this is the wood. So for comparison, it's about twice the thickness. And yeah, interesting to get your feedback. So the color was pulled from one of the Sucker Brook signs, which is very, very sun bleached. And I did not have this sign for a direct comparison. Otherwise, we certainly could have color matched. So the color choices here were a color match on the brown, but then the just sort of best attempts to make something look nice in yellow/yellow gold for the text. And you can see the base material is essentially white PVC. I think it'll look very nice with some gold hardware.
Very
Gold.
nice.
Yeah, so that's the common material sign. Is there any feedback? Aesthetics, materials, would you do it again? Would you change anything? We do have a bunch of signs that need to be replaced, so your feedback is valuable. You don't have to have it today, but any feedback that you do have, we can make happen for the next.
I think I'd like to see how it weathers.
Yeah, certainly.
I think the font is spot on though. I mean, that's the font.
Yeah.
I find it so funny that like in like the design world, everyone's like, Comic Sans, and we're like, yes, Comic Sans.
I don't know if is the TV seeing this?
Yeah, you're good. We
Oh,
just
yeah.
hopped on.
Comments.
I tend to like the darker background color, which is nobody's fault. Just that's what we had for comment.
Right.
But I know that yellow on black is like the highest visibility thing you can have. So the darker the background, the more the writing pops. Like in bright sunlight, that could be a little bit washed out, whereas that always is visible.
Yeah.
So that's my only comment. Is just the darker background color will help with visibility.
Yep.
And the lighter font. The yellow.
Yeah.
The yellow font looks, I mean,
It is definitely
looks
lighter.
easier
For sure.
Or it's like less orange, more yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that seems easier to me.
I have heard that feedback echoed by others, just in terms of increasing the contrast
Yeah.
between the colors, so darker background, lighter
I
text.
think it's better accessibility, especially if people have eyesight issues or the sunlight is hitting it in a weird way.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of glare just coming off of the PVC.
I'm sure it's a more shiny.
Just a little more of a gloss finish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
There's nothing wrong with that one.
Right.
It just could be better.
Yeah. If you had not showed me this one, I would have been like, "Looks great."
Yeah. Okay. Sign. Well,
And
yeah,
then
that's
it's
that's valuable. I mean, that's consistent feedback I've heard is just increased contrast, and that's very easy to do for next time. Glare, if possible, slightly more matte finish, and yeah, it's an experiment. We'll see how it weathers. It's probably pretty low stakes. It's a lovely trail. We put a lot of work into it this summer, getting it back into shape, where people can walk on it. It had a bit of a lapse in its mowing, but yeah, nice trail, but not super frequently traffic.
Is Anna Day still doing stuff this month, or is she sort of?
No, Anna's finished for the year.
Okay. Because what I was gonna say is, anytime we do anything to any trail, I always think, shouldn't we have a community walk on that trail and be like, hey, everybody, if you come on Saturday at noon, like somebody who knows something about how the trail is maintained or why it's where it is, or that kind of thing, will be walking it, and you could just, especially for people who are like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to do a trail that's maybe they have like a knee issue and I don't want to get myself out on the trail and then be like, this is too much, to have somebody to go with. Just a thought for the future is it would be nice to have occasional. That seems like something that a trail steward might be able to do if they need to go check a trail anyway. Say, I'm going to check this trail this time if people want to walk with me.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Hey, any other comments on the trails? You did not list any other staff updates for this week.
Yep. I don't have any other updates.
And we're going to talk about funding later on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
That was another thing.
Certainly, there's probably some small things I can mention, but I think it's probably more prudent to move on to.
Can I just give a quick update? I had my students in class summarize all of the natural areas, and I wanted to make it fit what we're working on in class. So it's not exactly like I was like, you got to go on all trails and like read what other people are saying and make sure everything is up to date. So I'll send it to you. I think it's like you're gonna be like, this is not whatever. But in the process of this, it occurred to me that it might be cool for them to do, for this class to do something that would actually be useful next semester or like next fall. That was less like, I don't know, last minute. Like if they actually came to all the natural areas and took pictures and like made something that could live on the website, that would be very class appropriate. So I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely carve out an opportunity to return to the orientation package conversation soon and pull everything together that everyone's been working on.
Excellent. So I think we're running ahead of the schedule here. Fast moving today.
Oh, I thought. Never mind. I was misjudging. I thought I was supposed to be done at 7:15, but that's when I was supposed to start. Well, I can just say a couple of additional things.
Yeah,
so,
go for it.
For Allen Brook repair project, the permits are essentially prepared, and so those are going to be submitted as soon as they can be. The permit that is expected to take the longest time to review is the wetlands permit. So we've submitted that for pre-application review, just to make sure that nothing needs to change. Because once you submit, you pay the fee. But Army Corps and stream alterations are pretty much ready to go. So it's very exciting.
Do they have a requirement for how soon they have to turn it around to you?
Like an SLA?
I don't believe so. I think it's just based on capacity.
That's what I suspected.
Yeah. And then the other quick update is that CSWD Murph was on the DRB agenda last night. I did not stay till the end to see officially how the voting roll fell, but it was very smooth read through from the staff review after the Conservation Commission. Everything was in compliance or with compliance anticipated. They received some warm comments from the DRB, so it seemed like that is moving through.
Resolved.
Yeah. which was great to hear.
Is the process working? Is how I feel about it.
I actually have some unrelated questions that you might be able to help on. I sent you an email a couple of weeks back. The governor signed an executive order streamlining permitting processes and rolling back some building standards. Included in that was a pretty significant rollback of class 2 wetland buffers, and the current statewide standard is 50 feet. This executive order rolls it back to 25 feet.
Yes.
I imagine that has made it through some email chains. It hasn't exactly broken through on any of the state news, surprisingly. But do you have your ear to the ground on that issue, and have you heard about it?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Have other folks heard about this?
No.
Governor's executive order.
I heard about the housing bit, but I didn't hear about them.
So
Yeah,
yeah, on
Buffer.
the substance of the executive order is purportedly housing. So it was in an order that was designed to cut various amounts of red tape in different areas to make it easier to build housing. It's the short version. Dave, correct me if you feel like anything. So now, one of those areas was a fairly sweeping change to the state wetland regulations that was written in a fairly ambiguous way. There's a lot of interpretation that needs to be done. The state wetlands program has a lot of work to do. I'll just leave it at that. And it is potentially some pretty disruptive to wetland protections. The general thrust of it is that the buffers go from 50 to 25, and the only wetland, a wetland review only needs to happen by the state if there is a mapped class 2 wetland on the VSWI map, which in Williston and most parts of Chittenden County and other parts of northern Vermont, those maps were all recently just redone to be much higher accuracy. But in other parts of Vermont, there's still the VSWI is still the old maps that have been around for decades and are pretty spotty. So that's a potentially very big change. However, it's supposed to apply primarily in sort of growth areas is the way it's written. But that's where the vagueness of the way it was written comes into play, because there's a whole list of areas where this rule change applies, and some of the things in that list make it seem like anywhere that could potentially have the capacity for septic, capacity for residential, would fall under these rules. Cool. So it is a question mark. According to the way the executive order was written, it effectively goes into effect immediately.
It actually backdates to 2024.
What? So does that mean people would revisit old decisions?
Basically means that you get a pass on prior violations, we think.
But okay, what if a decision was made in 2024? Then would you go back to that?
It's possible. It's possible.
I feel that we need like a primer on that. Like,
clarify.
or like, how would we handle somebody? Like, we've had just
denials due to wetland, like UPS expansion.
Right. Yeah.
And
And what if those applicants were to come back and we were to have to revisit recommendations?
Well, there is no primer because this hasn't really been handled yet. I know a couple folks in the wetlands department, and they're figuring out as they go.
Yeah.
As fast as they can, and it opens up this gray area where certainly there could be legal challenge potentially to rulings that have been made or to things that are in process, but in practicality, the question of whether that's worth it and how likely it is to succeed like that's a gamble for someone
Yeah.
as well
Mhm.
to try to push that through. So
And it doesn't say that towns need to change their
yes,
bylaw.
right. So local
buffers.
regulations are also unchanged, of course. Williston's local regulations generally follow the previous ruling. In some cases, provide additional protection. For example, class 3 wetlands can be considered for buffers and things.
Mhm.
So, that's kind of what I feel like I can summarize, given that there's a general lack of clarity about how this is going to be handled, where it is going to apply, and how the rule book will be rewritten to incorporate this or not. Another question mark is whether there will be third-party legal challenge to the executive order that could slow down implementation, could change things. So it's definitely significant. I think there are people. There are also people who see the potential positive side. Certainly, if you're looking at areas that are designated for growth appropriately, some people do view it as this is actually a step in the right direction. You know, we should be doing less management of buffers in areas where we're really trying to concentrate housing and development. We should do more in areas where we're trying to protect for conservation. So there is that argument that is being made. On the other hand, ambiguity leads to loopholes, leads to exploitation, and leads to general confusion. So, yeah, that's what I feel like I can say right now. But I will definitely, if anyone hears, you know, it's an important conversation to keep going. And when if I hear anything from the state wetlands program that I'm able to share.
So for the record, we're talking about Executive Order number 625, signed by the governor on September 17th. And it is on the governor's website, easily findable. It is lengthy. I will echo some of what Dave was commenting on, that the regulators I work with at the state were surprised by this order, and it does affect energy codes as well. So their office would have been the ones consulted, and from what I understand, not all of their advisement was taken into account.
Promoting housing construction and rehabilitation.
Correct. So that's what we're talking about. Feel free to read it. I asked Dave if in the minutes you could include a link for general awareness.
Sure.
For the commissioners here to follow and read at their leisure. But to Kim's point, we asked for guidance too on how to interpret this change in energy code and regulations.
Yeah.
And our regulators were,
They're like, we don't know yet.
we don't know yet. But they did ultimately give us something at great pressure from me to deliver that, because we needed to know how to interpret it.
Yeah.
And so this was rolled out very quickly. There is no guidance on anything. And so I can understand that you don't have anything to share with us other than just like, hey, this happened, it's out there, and there's a lot of questions.
Right. And our local regulation is not impacted. Of course,
The bylaws for Williston.
exactly. Of course, when you create precedent, that provides an opening for local regulation to change.
Yeah, there could be pressure to adjust the bylaws to match the state.
This is not law. I mean, that's the other thing. This is an executive order that remains in effect until it's not in effect anymore, which could be 2 years from now.
Right. However, it is the at least when it comes to wetlands, part of the order is that the state wetlands program is required to write this order into the regulations. So they're required to rewrite the regulations and redo the processes. Right. And even though the executive order could, imagine that in 2 years it expired, but they've already done that work. It's likely not something that would just snap back.
There's a couple of places where that's like baked into this, the rewriting of.
So I think this kind of emphasizes the point for the ERF discussion that we've been having. Certainly, what popped into my mind is like, oh well, it's all wetland. Why is that worth conserving? There's already strict regulations in place. It's like, well, if one governor comes in and snaps his fingers and says march in a different direction, then it's like it's not really protected anymore, is it?
Yep. Right.
So okay. Well, thanks for the update, Dave.
Yep.
Let's move on to the discussion of budget. So we will have a full half hour for that. So would you mind maybe just pulling up the memo from last year, and that can sort of be like our primer for where we're at?
Sure. Well, I'd like to share a couple of things.
Yeah, great.
Prime conversation. Okay, so I'm putting together a couple of resources here, thinking about this, just to give the Conservation Commission kind of an overview of the funding from the town that goes into conservation and conservation adjacent areas that the CC sometimes weighs in on. So there are 3 items of the town operating budget, or particularly planning and zoning operating budget, that relate to conservation. Sometimes the questions that the CC weighs in on apply directly to putting some of this money towards a project. So there's a stewardship coordinator, wages for the part-time work over the summer. There's trail planning and engineering budget, $2,000 a year. These are all annual. And trail maintenance and repairs of $11,250 currently.
And I think in past years that one has been like wavering around that like $10,000 to $15,000.
Okay. And this last line item is a little bit of a grab bag as trail maintenance and repairs. It's also really the pool of funding that gets applied to conservation projects in our country parks writ large. So when we've had Eagle Scout projects, when it's come to the Conservation Commission to recommend putting funding towards supporting pollinator garden initiative, for example.
VMN. Would that fall under?
That's a fair question, right? For if there was a recommendation, right? Where would that come from? Would it be a separate line item? Doesn't seem like it really would be trail maintenance and repairs.
Yeah, I seem to remember Melinda put it as a separate item.
Right. I believe there used to be a separate sort of conservation pool of funding at some point during Melinda's time, and I think that was sort of consolidated into a few of these categories. It certainly could be worthwhile, potentially, if it feels like there's discrete enough buckets to separate some of these out. So that's the annual operating budget. This is meant to go to stewardship costs, repairs, things like that. There's also a capital savings account related to trail management, and that money is meant to go to capital projects, so infrastructure that is going to last more than a year, typically that costs more than $10,000 in aggregate. So you might be replacing multiple small trail structures, but it's adding up to
a whole.
Yeah, exactly. There's about $32,000 currently in that savings account, with a projected allotment of about $20,000 a year, and that's something that the CC, planning for that, projecting out what the priorities are, is something that I believe the CC has been involved in the past. There is a capital savings account for the Ellenbrook Boardwalk repair. This is funding that was sequestered from different sources, including ARPA and the Community Projects Fund at different times, and has been applied to that specific project. That's currently around $42,000. All of which will likely get used in this project, possibly a little more.
Okay, so we're looking at balances, not
balances for the savings.
For the savings.
Yeah. Okay. And then Environmental Reserve Fund currently sitting at $549,000.
Now, why doesn't that have the plus 120 or whatever the?
Because I'm not aware of exactly how if anything has been guaranteed, or
because we make a request every year. for how much we want put into that, right?
Well, with the passage of the oh yeah, you weren't here for that. We passed the
penny.
half penny on the tax rate.
Oh, super. So we don't have
For
to-
this year,
for
the
this year.
current fiscal year, we didn't have to go through the operating budget. For this coming year, we have to decide whether we want to go back to the operating budget, or keep it as a ballot item, or do something
So people have to vote
every year. Yeah.
Well,
which may not be a long-term sustainable
right.
thing. Now, granted, other towns, I know South Burlington, they passed their penny on the tax rate or whatever as a something that, as a standing item. It doesn't need to be approved. So I don't know how that kind
My
of thing
understanding
works.
was that the town's legal counsel, their interpretation is that because of the way Williston's town government structure rules for the town is different than how South Burlington's are written, and so they had some leeway to do a standing tax that goes more than 1 year without revoting. Williston doesn't.
Yeah.
It have to be put to the voters every year.
So that's a good point. Thanks for clarifying. My perspective is that taxpayers do get fatigued from ballot items, and the climate changes pretty fast. And while there was broad support last year, it may not be something that you necessarily want to do every year, because it could potentially burn out voters on.
I think I would be confused as a voter. I think I'd be like, didn't we do this already?
Yeah.
Well, voters are confused. They think that was forever.
Yeah.
Whoever I've talked to, they said, "Oh, that was just for a year."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. I mean, and the fact that your tax rate right now includes that, and that I am actually worried that could be used to the advantage of the select board to make up a budget gap. To say oh well, if you bake in the fact that we're collecting on the ERF and we don't have to collect on that next year, then we're going to have this $120,000 windfall to help pay the budget gap. And I think that's erroneous thinking.
Right.
But I see it all the time.
But it's common erroneous.
Yeah.
So a couple other things. So with the capital savings account, this is something that is also an annual memo is submitted. That annual memo says, okay, here's a list of stewardship priorities. This is how much we think it's going to cost for the next 5 years. And that happens every year. So the current things that are on this list as of last year,
NPCA.
is the Schmoker Trail Boardwalk. This is what was submitted last year by Andrew, which was estimated at $50,000 to replace. I don't know if that is accurate. I think that may be an overestimate, personally. Mud Pond West Side Punch-In at around $10,000, and documenting use of trails, which has been flagged since then as not actually a capital project. So that's what was identified as sort of long-term priorities, and what that amounted to was the select board approving $15,000 bump in 2027. And actually, this looks like more like $10,000 a year, which is different from information I have. So that's what this is currently showing. I'll have to get that clarified why I thought that was $20,000 a year. But the current savings there is $32,000, and that is replenished. And one of the things that the CC certainly could weigh in on for next year is whether that list of priorities should change, what should be on that list. So that's something to keep in mind. I know that other things that have come up just in terms of general stewardship priorities identified by this committee is replacing the Mud Pond Conservation Area Boardwalk and putting more funding towards invasive species management, which would likely be need to be an annual operating budget cost.
I was
So
going to
it's
say, in my mind, that's one of the green lines up top.
not- exactly.
Is
I also feel like it would be really great to understand what the annual cost of doing that well would be.
Mhm.
Because right now we're relying largely on volunteer effort.
our future agenda items include
Right.
discussion
Yeah.
about a strategy for invasives, and that would determine the budget.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How aggressive are we going to be? What species are we going after? What
Who's
parts of town?
doing it? How much like human power
Right.
is that?
Yeah.
And like what is the cost per hour of that human power? Like that's a lot of
Dave, if a miracle happens and we're given access to park our cars and walk into Big Bend Park, is there any funding that Williston would need to set aside, or does that then fall under the stewardship of Winooski Valley?
for parking.
A lot of it certainly
No,
will
trail maintenance.
fall under the stewardship of Winooski Valley.
Okay.
There may certainly be startup costs that we needed to get that project off the ground that the town might want to contribute to. The capital savings fund is meant to be a flexible fund. So although we submit a list of identified priority areas, that's not meant to be fixed in stone. So it doesn't say, okay, well, you can only spend $50,000 on the Schmoker Trail Boardwalk. You can only spend.
It's like
So-
earmarking. You're like,
Yeah.
this is why we're requesting this much.
Exactly.
We think it's 50,000 for this. We think it's 10,000 for that.
Mhm.
Would the commission consider adding a placeholder for that now? What do people think on that? As a coming priority that we hope will be needed soon. Yeah.
One thought in my mind about it is Williston has not had a natural area maintained by Winooski Valley Parks District, and we've been paying in for many years. So one thought I have is that I sort of would like to see Winooski Valley Park District take the lead on like as much as possible in terms of the creation of the park.
I think it's also important for like I agree with you, and part of my reason for agreeing with you is that like the optics of like I think like we can intellectually argue that like there are many benefits to them managing natural areas that are to Williston that are outside of Williston, right? And we've been successful in pitching that to the select board. And also there's been this like it gets harder and harder to pitch it to the select board at paying that fee to them when they don't manage something in
Mhm. Yeah, the town actually took a vote on it one year and it
Yeah.
almost failed. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so there's like the optics of like what are they doing in Williston?
Mhm.
That
So-
gets tricky to argue.
I would feel more inclined to support like being generous with funds to help us start up stuff if we had sort of ongoing like a park or two in town that they've been managing and doing a good job.
Yeah,
Like, okay,
exactly.
we can throw some in, but this will be the first one in Williston, and so they, in my mind, this is sort of their chance to say, "Hey, Williston, thanks for all the support.
Right.
This is what you're getting out of that
Yeah.
in your town. Like you finally can see it in your town." So that's the initial thought. At the same time, I know that every year they just went to the select board last meeting,
Mhm.
and and Jacob went and made that point that I know there's no parks in Williston,
Yeah.
but I just went on a field trip with students to one of their parks in another town.
Right.
It's Fort Richmond, and it was a great experience.
Okay.
Well, and also like I don't know if there's like flood mitigation. It's not like
Mhm.
natural resources are like climate change isn't like Williston's managing differently than
Right,
South
exactly.
Burlington, and we just got to the border, so we'll just right. That's not how natural resources work, but I think that's hard for people to conceptualize.
I just wanted to temper my first comment by saying I know that they also struggle to maintain funding because each year towns are like, well, what are we getting for it? And other costs are going up, and so they're fighting the same financial headwinds everybody else is. But at the same time, this is our first
Yeah.
engagement with them.
Okay, so I'll add that just as to this list of stewardship priorities. I don't want to spend more time on that, but I think it would be good for you all to be thinking about that. If there is anything that sort of comes to the top of your mind in the next week or two, as I'm preparing and updating what these costs might look like and what our priorities are, definitely speak out. You can send me an email. You can bring it up at the next meeting. But that's something that the CC can certainly weigh in on and contribute to on a yearly basis, is setting those priorities.
Laura, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this isn't a stewardship priority. But, I know that for the Vermont Master Naturalist training that's going on right now in Williston and Richmond, Richmond had a fund where they're like, yeah, we just have this fund that we could spend out of, just like we could just, they approved money for the course that's going on now. And I know Williston doesn't have any little emergency budget for something that happens. And I was wondering, should we have a small one, like if we need a sign, or is that included in, do you think that's included in all these other things?
Generally that it would be included in, that would come out of our operating budget,
Okay.
Which you can overspend annual operating budget. And that gets,
Is it to justify it?
yeah, it has to be justified, it has to be, and then it's taken into account as far as I know, just like you can't underspend.
Would
Um,
9 also provide that? Would line 9 there? Trail management fund.
Most likely, well, yes and no. So again, capital projects are typically, what I was told is $10,000 in aggregate, and at least 1 year of value or more. So it wouldn't necessarily, it is a flexible savings account that can be applied to different projects, but it still has to qualify as a capital project.
Okay, so whatever we spent out of it would have
With that,
to
yeah.
itself qualify as a capital project.
Okay, so I want to make sure there's still plenty of time to talk about the ERA. So I'll just show.
Can I say one more thing
yes.
about the priorities? I think there's a matrix floating around somewhere with, like, from the town plan that was passed, all the different things and which areas they fall in. Is there anything on there that you think is not on here in terms of conservation items?
I have not yet cross-referenced anything with the new town plan. That'd be a great idea.
Come on
Good
in.
morning. Yeah. I'll just put these aside. You want to grab a chair for?
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
There you go.
Good
If
morning.
I may need 2 chairs, is there a second person? Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's another chair.
We
Yeah.
absolutely.
Come on in.
Sorry.
We're gonna
Yeah, they sat down this way.
switch over at 8:10. But you're welcome to join and listen in for the remainder of the current conversation.
You're welcome to have a muffin.
So that's the only thing that I would want to look at is what have we signed up for as a town to do that would come out of our conservation budget items, and over what time period. Some may be not applicable to the upcoming fiscal year because they're more medium and long term goals. But
Let's switch to the memo, because the memo really tends to be the focus of what we sent to Eric and our recommendation for ERF funding.
So I did want to call attention to, so it looks like, so this is the ERF master
Can you update your share screen?
fund record. Oh, did it not update? Uh-huh. Sorry.
then having the town website page about Article 6 from this past vote might be helpful to have ready as well.
So this is the record of the ERF that was shared with me most recently. There are a couple things in here which don't align entirely with the memo budget from FY25, which mentioned that the current balance was 531, and appeared to be 527 at the start of, or even actually less. Yeah, 525 at the start of fiscal year 26, and the transfer from the town currently is $40,000 to that fund plus interest. So I don't know if that corresponds to the penny on the tax rate, what the full amount is, and I also don't know how it works with regards to money trickling into this account.
It should be 110,000 roughly.
Yeah.
In total should be.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect a deposit every time that the Williston residents pay taxes. So it would be July, November, and February.
Okay, I'll look into that.
It's possible that funds are being sort of delayed going into it.
Yeah,
make sure
I believe
cash
that's
on
the
hand for
case,
other
yeah.
things.
Yeah, so that would be a question for following up, for sure. I'd like an answer to sort of when we would expect to see it on that stretch.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't doubt that is out there somewhere, but it's worth noting that's something that comes along with the strategy of funding the ERF through a tax rate, is that funding becomes available over time, as opposed to an appropriation, which might simply just transfer in as available. Okay.
So that's current balance, 550. It's only 20,000 more than what we thought we started the fiscal year with.
All right.
Okay, so I think we kind of kicked it off already with where I was thinking we should start this conversation, is that this memorandum was essentially rejected in full by the town manager, and we submitted it with the effect that we wanted to be sort of built as a line item in the budget. When it was rejected, we were asked by the select board to pursue ERF funding through the town ballot measure. As we've just discussed, the lawyers tell us for the town that the ballot should only be considered to be in effect for 1 year. And so nonetheless, the tax rate that everyone's paying right now includes the ballot measure. And so I want to kind of start this conversation with, like, fundamentally, do we assume we need to go back to ballot, or should we go back to the memo and instead sort of revamp the wording of this memo to also, yes, match some of the stuff that's on the website that we built last year, but more specifically to that point that, like, this is all, the town overwhelmingly voted for this. It was a 75% approval for the funding. Most residents feel like that was a permanent authorization. The select board and the manager should now sort of incorporate this into the budget appropriately and not consider it to be a discretionary item. It's already built in the tax rate. You have the ability now to sort of continue it and to continue its funding at the current pace. So that's kind of where I wanted to start the discussion.
I feel like arguing it that way is effective.
I agree.
Like, and saying this vote demonstrates overwhelming support, but asking residents to vote annually on it is like a burden, and it's going to exhaust and confuse people. Given the support, can you just bake it into the budget?
Now that you know. Yeah.
Right, now that we have evidence.
I think they're going to want to know whether we're going to ever put it back on the ballot, whether we plan to put it back on the ballot again.
Wouldn't we only do
Like
that
how
if
long
they
are
don't?
we going to put it in? Well, because the likelihood of them increasing the value over time, which it needs to do to stay, the benefit of a tax rate percentage is that as the grand list grows, the amount going in grows. And even what we got this past year is not quite the level that our sort of like forecasting said we need. It was 150K a year, and we're already behind by a couple hundred from years that we requested that and we didn't get it. And last year was 110. So I sort of feel like last year was a great success, but I just don't know how to sustain that success and get it up to the level that we need. We're close, but not quite there.
So is there a reason not to try this approach to repeat this essentially, but by saying, well, we have all this other information based on the people who approved this last year?
I would support requesting the select board. To be clear, I would support requesting the select board put it into the operating budget, but I would want to have a plan for setting their expectations about future years.
Yeah, so like saying if you were to do this, we would not then if you were to do this in a way that scaled over time so that we were, I don't know, funded sustainably and fully, or
Like at a minimum of a half penny on the tax
right,
rate.
then we won't go back to the voters. Like we don't have plans to go. We won't put it on the ballot anymore.
I agree with all of that. As you scroll down there, Dave, thank you for reminding us of this. We actually recommend the equivalent of 3/4 of a penny added to the tax rate. The voters approved a half penny on the tax rate. We basically made that recommendation, I think, to ourselves in January that we were gonna.
It's a big new thing.
Yeah, so we sort of self-reduced that recommendation from 3/4 to a half penny. We wanted to be consistent with what the voters approved. We could recalculate what a half penny on the grand list value would mean, and then adjust that recommendation. So it doesn't just have to be what we projected to collect in revenue from the ballot. We could ask Dave for your support in sort of developing a number of like what would a half penny on the tax rate in the next grand list value sort of be estimated to generate. That was what Andrew helped us with last time around.
And Shirley would be very easily able to help us project. I mean, they have projections of the grand list for years going out.
I guess the other strategy would have it be a standing ballot measure and to like see if we could think about language that would like really indicate it's a continuation. That seems much riskier.
I think if this memo was rejected by the select board, I would absolutely insist that the town reassess how they're interpreting it and include language in the ballot that says
shall the town continue
yes,
to like
exactly have it be like a continuation and sort of
like maintain the funding level of blah blah blah.
Yeah.
At some point, it starts sounding like a polling question. Like shall the town continue to fund this, and whether or not it has any standing as a ballot. Then the language is very specific about funding for that fiscal year at this rate, et cetera, et cetera. And so to get into the sort of long-term funding, I think the memo, in my mind, is the best approach. Have the select board reject us again, basically. And then if they do reject us, then know full well that they're taking that $120,000 on the tax rate that's already baked into the collection schedule, and be pretty upfront that like you can't just take that as a windfall for the town. Like that actually is money collected for the ERF that you're now going to repurpose for something else, and be kind of upfront with that. That would be my recommendation. I would get pretty let's just say animated about it.
Yeah.
If it went there.
I mean, I think the select board is incentivized to try to work something like this into the annual budget. I mean, it's not viewed, as far as I know, as necessarily a sustainable thing to simply have items bumped out in perpetuity on their own vote. And I know the select board has mixed feelings about that kind of strategy in general. They indicated during the town plan hearings, simply because you can take any issue that has a public good involved and pull that separately. That tends to get more response than does passing a budget, which is the holistic conclusion of everything that needs to go into funding the town, including things that are expenses that can be harder for citizens to value and things that are easier for citizens to value. So I would think that your strategy would have some support. I don't know, of course, how you see it, but from my eye, what you're proposing seems like a good way to proceed, at least with Plan
So the date on this memo from last year was submitted at the end of November. That means that we need to just have a quick huddle to updating it and including the language that was just discussed. Have a draft of that memo in time for the next meeting. So I'm thinking that Dave, you and I can work on this, and Reed as treasurer, I know you're gonna want to be involved as well. So I would propose as next steps that we sort of take this feedback offline, update this memo. I'll be happy to sort of, if I can get a draft version of this going through you, I can take the first swing at it, and then bring it back to the commission in the November meeting so that we have something to show again.
Right. Okay.
And I think just looking at the, I think having the graph there, identifying the funds will be important to update. So that's, I would just plan ahead that like we're going to need to ask for that projected collection schedule from the town treasurer, and then we'll have to sort of show how the requested amount stands next to the voter approved amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would make it really clear that like whatever that collection schedule is in that 2026 bar, that be like the very clear, like make it like a bright yellow line or something, but it would be like, this is what the voters approved. We're asking for a continuation of that because it's already built into the collection schedule for the town.
Yeah, FY26 should probably have two bars: what was requested, which is there in red, and what was approved, which is a smaller.
I don't think we need to ask. I don't think we need to show what the requested amount was
For fiscal year 27, would you show, like, I just want to be clear that what was approved is not the full amount that our projections say we need.
Right.
Agree.
I don't want them to look at it and go, oh, 110, perfect, that's all you need. Because that's been what's happened in the past. Is the minimum, oh, could we cut that down a little bit? What about 90,000? It's kind of how the conversation's always gone.
I kind of feel like we had that discussion, but does anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I think I agree with Reed. I feel that I feel that there's a tendency to do like 90% and call it good enough.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
The only thing
No, I agree with you also.
Does that like kind of set a precedent? Like we're asking for this amount and they always get 90, and then is that going to?
It's not as clean cut as that's like I don't want to insinuate that like they multiply by 0.9 and give us that, but that there's always like it always feels like this dance. And I think what Rita's saying, or this like negotiation of like, could we do a little less, or like, would it be okay to do a little less? And I think demonstrating like just giving them more information about the need versus the allocation shows like how much that adds up to over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think maybe changing the language from requested to need.
Well, yeah, or
Yeah.
projected
Kind
need.
of sounds like
Projected
well, we're
need.
going high and you only give us what we.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, like,
Right. No, I don't think
that's
we're.
what's going on.
I think to your point, I'm getting into you. I don't want to insinuate that we're like, well, they always give us low, so we ask high.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening. I
Right.
think
And
we're asking for what we estimate to be required.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to avoid if we're always saying like this is what we ask for and this is what we get. We're always asking high, like so making that really clear. This is what's needed for sustainability of this account. and it's not being met.
And that's why we actually put it on the ballot last year.
Right. That's
The first thing reading I said to Heather when this passed 75% approval was we should have asked for the full 3/4.
Yep.
We didn't. Right?
Yeah,
We got
just didn't know.
73% of what we projected we need.
Yeah. So I hear I think let's see how this looks and how I think
We don't have to decide it today.
we don't have to decide it today, but having a clear bar to say like this is what the voters approve, this is what we need, this is what we're asking for, something like along those lines. I don't know if because I'm gonna make the wording very clear that the town manager and the select board rejected this memo last year, but the voters approved it at half penny. Therefore, like I think the assumption going forward is what the voters approved, right? The memo being rejected last year is sort of like that's a fact, but the voters approved it. That's the truth that moves forward in my mind, and that's the words that I'll use to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
But the graph we can look at.
Yeah. And I would just add that I would think that the priority would be establishing a consistent funding mechanism over any particular amount, really, because amounts can be negotiated, but there isn't a consistent funding mechanism. And
We'd like to get to where we request
stuck.
an appropriate amount and it gets into the budget. that's what we're trying to get to.
Okay. So we do have 3 weeks, which is nice. So that'll give us a little bit more time to update this. But if you could get a shared document going for us, that would be helpful. And we'll put this back on the agenda for next week.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you. So we'll move on to our first permit of the day. I believe Bill Erskine and his wife are here. And Dave wrote a very helpful staff report. There's a lot of submission materials. That was sort of a lot to get through, so maybe I'll just sort of skip over all of that and ask for Dave's summary of the staff report.
Sure. All right, Professor, welcome.
Good morning.
This is the Williston Conservation Commission. Kim Coleman, Lauren Meyer, Dave Westman, Lynn Blevins, and Reed Carr. I'm David Maroney, the Senior Conservation Planner. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Bill Erskine, and this is my wife, Gail.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Gail.
Well, thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks for coming in person. So DP 2605 at 818 Sunset Hill Road is going for a discretionary permit. This is an application that does not require a pre-app stage for discretionary permit, below the threshold for that. So I'll provide a summary of the staff report from our initial review of the proposed project materials and project summary and relevant bylaw sections as they pertain to Conservation Commission input. And we'll have some time to discuss the drafted recommendations. All right, so this is a permit request to amend the building envelope at 818 Butternut Road, Lot 4 of the Erskine-Kimes subdivision.
It's actually Sunset Hill Road.
Sunset Hill Road. I apologize that.
Do you want to share?
Oh, yep, I will. Thank
the
you for
record of that.
It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Oh yeah.
We all know it well.
All right. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, that should be Sunset Hill Road here in the description. You can see the quick aerial image right here. This is lot 4 of what was initially a very important subdivision for Williston conservation back in 1998 and 1999. This was the McKay Farm, and over here you can see all this farmland on the north of Sunset Hill Road, and land to the south that provided a conservation easement and access to what eventually became 5 Tree Hill Road, was put into conservation.
5 Tree Hill Trail.
5 Tree Hill, yes, trail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just point to? I think I see it, but can you just point to where the parking lot is for 5 Tree on this?
It's like down here.
Yeah,
It's right in the-
I think it's that little hedgerow.
Yeah, that
Is it?
little
Oh,
ridge.
yep, you're right. Actually, you can see it.
Yeah.
Right there. Yep. Good point.
It's from
So this is the Schmoker Trail right here, and from that subdivision was created. I believe this was referred to as Lot 1 in the final subdivision. This is Lot 2, 3, and 4, I believe. But you'll note that one of the materials shared was a Conservation Commission report back on this subdivision that uses different lot numbering, so it's a little confusing. All right, the applicant requests a modification to the building envelope as follows. The southern boundary along Sunset Hill Road was set at 120 feet during the subdivision process. The request is to change that to 50 feet, which is the minimum standard in the ARZD. Eastern boundary requests to change from 200 feet to 150 feet, and no change at the western and northern boundary. So our staff recommendation is, as we go through this, WCC should discuss the scenic viewshed impact. That's really the conservation resource that is relevant, with consideration to the project history and, of course, the current conditions on Sunset Hill Road, and then seek any additional information from the applicant regarding plans for the site. So project history, this project has an extensive history going, as mentioned, back to 1998 when preliminary subdivision review began. At the time this was reviewed by the Planning Commission, there was no TRB, which approved the subdivision, and you can see the 1999 minutes. Gary Hawley was on the Conservation Commission at the time. You can see some comments from Gary, who just stepped down after more than 30 years on the Williston Conservation Commission.
And lives on Sunset Hill.
All right, so let's jump into it. So this is, if we look at these 4 lots, they're considered low on the ERF prioritization map. The Williston Significant Wildlife Habitat Area map does have a little skinny strip that extends into the property. However, it's entirely within the 15-foot setback on the western side of the property, which is not expected to be impacted or changed in any way. There are no uncommon, rare, threatened, or endangered species or unique natural communities, and the subject parcel is not identified as containing farmland of statewide importance. So that brings us to the relevant section of the Williston bylaw, which is the scenic viewshed. And hopefully you got a chance to review the documents with the submission. The scenic viewshed impacts were a primary component of the original conversation back in 1999 around this entire subdivision. The parcels mapped within primary foreground viewshed. And this is the viewpoints at the crest of Sunset Hill Road. There are a few crests if you walk the hill, so the viewshed does change a little bit. All right, so I've provided a summary here. I'll try to be a little brief about this. Notice there's some specifics here about the lot numbers and how they're different in the different notes from 1998, 1999. But the important thing is to know that was the crux of the debate in 1999, is how will this subdivision impact the views of Mount Mansfield from Sunset Hill Road in that important scenic viewshed. There was a Conservation Commission recommendation during that time that the completion and design of the houses to be built on these lots would be completed in such a manner as to minimize impact on the viewscape towards Mount Mansfield.
Can we pause there?
Yeah.
The view is not towards Mount Mansfield.
Yeah, it's
the
not.
view is towards the Adirondack.
Yeah.
Depends on which way you're facing.
Yeah.
So if you approach from the opposite end, or if you approach from, rather, I should say, the east side.
That's Mount Mansfield.
Yeah, both the
Or no,
photos.
that's Mount Mansfield.
No,
Let's
that's
go
the
to the
left.
left.
No, that's Mount
Well,
Mansfield.
it depends on which way you're looking. So we took a bunch of pictures and we went to the site. So if you're approaching from the east, right around
Wait a minute, let me-
Yeah, it was like west.
right around here, you look out and you
That
see
is
the
the-
Adirondacks.
Right, that's it, yeah.
Right. Now, the reason we took those photos is to show that adding a structure to Lot 4 would be unlikely to impact that that view shed.
West. Okay.
Right, the west.
Yeah.
You can see, yes, clean over the house that is in the foreground on lot 2. Adding any kind of similarly sized structure would be unlikely to make it.
Is that house at 50 feet?
This house is set at 120 feet. We'll get to that. So one of the conditions of approval that came out of the 1999 subdivision review process was essentially a guideline to turn that Conservation Commission recommendation into some kind of concrete guideline, and that was to set the front setback back to 120 feet. That is where this home was built on lot 2. And it's worth noting that on lot 4, no primary was built. So there was a home location indicated on the original plan. There's a barn added to the site later. Okay, so that was included in the conditions of approval. The condition for a 120-foot setback, along with that language, that completion design of houses would be built to minimize impact on Mount Mansfield. That was determined to be the view shed that was important in that discussion. So you can see all that historical record if you look back. Assuming you got a chance to do that. Mentioned no home was built on that site, but the neighboring home to the east was developed at 120.
Is that, sorry, I'm just going to point to the screen. Is that this house?
That is the house that is at, yeah.
Okay, so this is 120 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, so a couple
This is looking towards me.
of additional comments. In the draft version of the 1999 conditions of approval, initially put the setback at 100 foot, and then that was changed to 120 foot during the final hearing. I didn't find any record of why that 20 feet was added. Today, we can note that if you walk that road, the westerly neighbor, which was not part of that 1999 subdivision, has a home that is set back only 80 feet. And you can see that right here. So a couple of notes just from on-the-ground observation. We included those pictures. If you visit this site, this home on lot 2 does impact the view shed towards the Green Mountains, as well as these large trees in the front. That's really kind of sets the bar in terms of impact from this part of Sunset Hill Road. Any structure,
if you put something to the west of that that's the same setback and the same size, it's not going to impact the view shed any more than it's already impacted.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the concept.
Exactly. This home here in the back. Hello. Welcome.
Come on in. Would you like to join
Come
us?
on in. I do have a seat. You can take a seat in the back if you like. We'll be with you in a moment.
Just real quick, my name is Scott Curry. Been here since 1969. Recovered lumber from the bridge is perfect. And that will help to put the walkway over here where to go across. That wood is so perfect. I gathered it this morning about 2-3 o'clock. They took some of it and I said, no, don't throw it in the dump. We can use it for the walkway. And I've been stressing myself to help out.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure. Why don't you continue the conversation?
I live on 92 Industrial Ave, wherever it happens.
Yeah, here. Let's chat real quick out front.
We want to maintain the focus for our applicants.
No, you're fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about the view shed here, and what I think Dave was sort of getting at was the impact towards Mansfield is minimal.
From my lot, if you stand at the corner of my lot.
Which one is your lot? I'm sorry.
The one with the barn.
Okay.
Yeah, just here.
Just really good.
So if you stand like here,
Either anywhere along there, you cannot see Mansfield because there's trees.
Mhm.
There's trees, out over all those trees in the background.
That's
These
roughly
here.
that's this picture.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
even if they were farther forward.
right. You can't see Mansfield from my lot.
Mm-hmm. You probably could at some point in the past when things were.
Not since we did it.
Have those trees in the background always been there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's old growth.
And what can I ask? What's the reason that you wanted to change
The I want to build another barn.
Mhm.
Okay, and the best spot for the barn, excuse me, the best spot for the barn is in front of the existing.
So that would be, sorry, I'm gonna move it slower, right here.
Yeah. So there's not enough room there right now with the current building envelope to build a barn. So tucking it up against that tree line is the best place to build a barn.
Yeah, so it might come as, you know, a little bit closer to the road here, but you're saying you'd keep it along this tree line here.
Correct.
Mhm.
So that's the impetus to changing the building envelope is to have enough room to put another barn.
I didn't see any site plans in the application. I just saw a bunch of property.
Yeah, I talked to Emily and she said I didn't need to do that now. It would be part of another permit for a building permit.
So right now it's a concept to have a structure there. You're thinking it's a barn.
Yeah,
Because if we modify the setback, I think you would be able to come in with an application to build a house.
yeah.
At that location.
My
So is it-
plan is not to build a house.
Right. We're just keeping that in mind. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I've owned the lot for 20 some years and I haven't built a house there yet. We obtained the lot to build the barn. We built the barn. Now the plan is to build another barn.
How high is the barn going to be?
It's a story and a half barn.
Okay. So one height and then like an attic level, like loft.
Yeah,
kind of height.
it's 1 story and then sub wall that's 4 feet high and then the roof. That's a post and beam barn. It's another post and beam barn. You know, it's a historic barn. It currently resides in Richmond.
Oh, you're
Or
gonna
not Richmond,
relocate a barn.
not Richmond, Heinsberg. Yeah,
Oh,
another
neat.
post and beam barn.
That's very cool.
oh.
So
So not new construction.
no, a post and beam
Wow.
barn. And that's why the collar and the cane, because I was taking the barn down and fell off the ladder.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I didn't do this just for sympathy.
Oh, no. Sorry to hear that. Okay.
So that's the plan, is to build another barn. As I say, with the current setback, there's not enough room there. And it would be about the same, I would put it about the same setback as the house to the left there.
Okay.
Tucked up against the,
That's at like, you said 80, David?
This is it. Yeah, this is about 80.
So he's rebuilding a historic barn
Hmm.
that he's taking down from Heinsberg.
That's great. Okay.
That's the intended next permit.
There.
If we
Yeah.
can get the setback.
Oh, and you said there's you have a planned location. There's a planned location for it. So,
Yeah, here along the hedgerow,
Okay. Along the
but
left,
closer than the 120 setback.
yeah. Okay. Closer.
It would come closer.
Are you going to cut any trees?
no,
Okay, so the barn would sort of be behind that.
behind that clump of trees.
Yeah.
So one thing I'll note is I can't recall if we included this in the roll of pictures, but when Emily and I were looking at Sunset Hill Road, this left part of the property, there's really only one small, when you're standing right here, you can see a view of, I think, Bolton, through these trees. But after that, it's really this home, these trees that
Until you get to
are
the big
obscuring
field.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Until you get to the big field and the open vista.
Yeah, once you get to that big field, then you see Mansfield
Mhm.
and the whole range south of there.
Right.
So even if a house was built there, it wouldn't obstruct the view.
It'd be
Closer
unlikely
to
to.
the
And so,
road.
the other thing to consider here is, so there's a couple of sort of idiosyncrasies with this project. There is a condition of approval that was put into the 1999 subdivision that the proposed building locations for the homes shall be as approved by the Planning Commission and subsequently verified by the zoning administrator prior to the issuance of the building permit for either lot. So we interpret that as meaning, if a home is built in the site, it has to be built in the site that was shown on the original plan. My colleague favored removing that recommendation as that's not a typical regulatory mechanism in Williston. Typically, it's the building envelope is the building envelope, and that in the height regulations in the zoning district plus the building envelope is what regulates where things can go and provides the landowner latitude to make those decisions. So that's one note. The other is simply in terms of open space requirements in Chapter 31. There are some relevant, there's really one relevant provision, 31.9.7, minimize visual impacts in open areas where homes and accessory buildings cannot be effectively screened by existing vegetation. They should be sited where they will be visually absorbed by slope or woods. Now, these sort of aesthetic requirements, there's always some interpretation. This isn't universally observed, I would say, if you look at the building, but it is a guideline in the bylaw that could potentially apply to siting a home. If you were to walk on the road and you look at this home in the back, it's the height of that home is well behind the ridge, below. If you look at this home, however, which we're kind of comparing to, it is silhouetted against the sky. So this home was built in Lot 2, doesn't necessarily conform to that.
Where the red barn is behind it is significantly lower.
Yeah.
And the house, if the house had been built back further, it would have disappeared below the.
However, I do think the plans that were just articulated of where they would build the barn more closely aligns to that guidance because it would be behind those clump of trees.
Yeah, absolutely. So I bring that up when discussing with my colleague. We didn't necessarily think that there was a one consistent concrete way to apply that bylaw, but we did note that a house on the right side of the site would be different than a house or structure on the left side of the site. So just something to note with regards to that, with the degree to which any structure would minimize visual impact in general according to that bylaw.
Right. And we're keeping the building envelope on the left-hand side.
That's what the proposal is.
So then, when we will see a final site plan, is the expectation
things constructed?
It's a barn.
I do not believe so for this. So the discretionary permit is simply to amend that building envelope, right? So to my knowledge, I need to confirm with my colleague, but I don't believe there would be another conservation weigh-in before final plans. If the building envelope is amended and that clause is removed from the original conditions, then that gives the landowner latitude to work within that building envelope according to what the aims are. So I believe the construction of the next steps would be an administrative permit. That wouldn't require another Conservation Commission review.
Can you go through the recommendations?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So findings. Proposed project is in the ARZD. Subject is 2.81 acres. Some of this is just kind of our basic information, low priority, no desired trails, no impacts on a number of the conservation areas. Subject is within primary foreground viewshed. So 9 is where we customized a little. We put in, these were the following relevant conditions from the 1999 subdivision approval. The position and design of houses to be built on lots 2 and 4, those are the front lots, shall be completed in such a manner as to minimize impacts. The proposed building location shall be as approved. This is the clause I mentioned that my colleague felt should be removed. So that's one of the conditions of approval that was from the Conservation Commission recommendations in 1999. This is the second condition of approval, the minimum setback of 120 feet. So we put 7 draft recommendations. Maintain the tree-lined hedgerow along the western property within that 15-foot setback. That was the area that was highlighted as significant wildlife habitat on our map. In practicality, it just means it's a hedgerow that likely facilitates some small degree of wildlife movement. That would be the
Primarily mice that come in.
yeah. It not necessarily a major component of significant wildlife habitat, but that would be the rationale. Western and northern boundary to remain as existing. That's part of the request. Eastern and southern boundary. This is, you have the option to recommend that it remain at the given specification or be modified to the request or potentially something in between. Then whether you'd like to support repealing that condition 3C about the building or about the dwelling needing to stay in the specific position. And what have we right here? WDB Chapter 31, height limit of 36 above average finished grade is sufficient for compliance. I think my colleague put that in, and I believe that recommended draft language is a response to the bylaw about having buildings silhouetted against the sky or not. So basically saying, well, the building on lot 2 is silhouetted against the sky. It's setting the standard there. There wouldn't be significant additional impact by allowing this
New structure.
This new structure to go in. So we think that this bylaw doesn't need to be highlighted in any additional way.
Comments? Yeah.
I will make a motion to approve the recommendations with the word modify in both 4 and 5.
Any discussion?
Is there any impact to you all as applicants if the southern boundary along Sunset Hill, it said modified at 80 foot? Does that impact your ability to utilize that space? I'm just thinking about the house to the west is set back to 80 feet. I don't know if having a consistent setback distance was a value to the commission. But does that impact your ability to put a barn there if it's an 80-foot setback?
It would be close.
It would put them tight together, the two barns. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of curious about that too. I'm also curious if I know this is for a barn, but specifically number 6 sort of is a very specific repeal that I have some broader questions on what is our authority to actually do that in the first place. But would we treat this any differently if it were a house? And should it be thought of as a barn, which is a very different thing from a house? And were these stipulations set in the anticipation of it being a house and not a barn?
I was thinking even if it's a house, it's not going to get in the view.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think yes, we should be. It is a very
Yes.
different thing, and yes, even if it was a house,
Yeah.
Okay.
it wouldn't.
I'd say to that question, you don't necessarily have to include this as a WCC recommendation. I think the reason that's in there is because it just potentially relates to the scenic view shed concern, and that's the.
Can you explain this to me? Because I'll be honest, the thing that I'm thinking about, and unrelated to your application, the permit that you told us about 2 weeks ago on Shagbark Lane is of a similar age, where they have a long driveway and an approved structure in the middle of a significant wildlife habitat. If we can repeal this, why can't we repeal that?
That's an approved, finalized
They already had a
permit for that building site that has been acted on since.
Okay.
So there's nothing that would bring that to the DRB. There's no impetus for the DRB to act on that.
They have a beyond discretionary permit?
Yeah, they have an approved administrative permit.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's just really old, right? It's just
yeah,
from like
just
the
from-
90s.
I think it's from the early 2000s. I think that's right. So there's just not.
There's some differences in the stage that it's at.
Yeah, there's some different.
Okay.
You know, you could
That's helpful.
repeal someone's home being built, right? For example, or something.
Yeah, okay. Thank
The
you.
WCC doesn't have to weigh in on that. You know, ultimately that question will be put in front of the DRB regardless. So I'll just show this is the proposed site, or this is the. Bill, is this the proposed site plan, or is this the original development plan? But this is the proposed
Yeah,
envelope
that's the
change.
proposed. And the house, the barn is where the barn is. And
Right.
the house thing that's there is just something the engineer stuck there.
Right.
You know, it doesn't
So
necessarily mean that's where the house would end up. If there
so
Oh, we're
right.
we're-
That is what our interpretation of that condition was, that if a house was put on this site, it would have to be in this location. As you know, this wasn't the. Sorry, here's the final plan. This was the approved final plan. So our interpretation was of that clause was, okay, if a house is put on the site, it has to be in this spot.
or any structure or barn,
Home.
home. Okay.
Home.
So this is not directing the barn to be put.
It's not directing the barn. I don't believe the barn would be directed, but I think that's why my colleague put that recommendation in there. Is it's just not, you know, if this site is going to be amended, it makes sense from a modern way of you know how our bylaws are done, how buildings are regulated.
Could we just amend 6 so that instead of it saying for dwelling position and design, instead of dwelling, like barn position and design?
I don't think condition 3C affects the location of an auxiliary structure. I think it's just the dwelling.
Then could we be like, given that it's an auxiliary structure, like, I don't know, condition 3C doesn't apply? Like, do you want us to acknowledge the conditions in there, but that it's not relevant to what we understand the project to be?
You know, I'm just wondering if it's relevant for the WCC to weigh in on this one at all. If honestly, to me, sounds like a DRB topic.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I would like to strike 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Laura, Lynn, any thoughts on that?
I
Striking
agree.
6?
It's just confusing.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't see how it adds value.
Yeah, if the DRB wants to weigh in on Emily's recommendation, then that's their jurisdiction.
Okay.
Any
So on number 5, I know I mentioned the 80-foot before, given that would, in theory, put the barns really close together, which might not look good or be possible. I also am fine with it as drafted at 50 feet.
And how much does that really matter when there's trees in between
Yeah.
the road and
Yeah.
Given the other site
like,
characteristics.
I will also just say that personally, I think a barn actually will enhance the view
Yes.
from the road. So I actually do think that I'm thinking about this as a barn and not a house. I think a house would not enhance the view shed. I think a barn absolutely would.
Especially like a historic.
Yeah, I think it sounds like an awesome project. So okay, so let's get a motion to modify as
I will move to approve the recommendations, striking number 6 and keeping the language modify to 150 feet for number 4 and modify to 50 feet for number 5.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the motion as
Aye.
Okay, so for the record, who proposed?
I moved and
Kim seconded.
Reed, Kim second, and the motion was to
approve recommendations.
approve both modifications.
Yeah.
And strike 6.
And strike 6.
All right. So those recommendations will be conveyed to the Development Review Board and will appear in the staff report that will be shared prior to the October 28th hearing the DRB.
Great, Thank
Be
you very
careful.
much.
Thank you. Yeah, careful on those ladders.
Good luck with the barn.
I've heard of
Yeah,
too many
good luck.
people falling off ladders these days.
Yes.
Oh,
All right, we've got to move right along.
Yeah, we gotta.
Thank you so much for coming
Thanks
today.
so much.
It's nice to meet you.
Good luck with your project.
Okay, we're joined online by our next applicant.
This is 2606 413 Butternut Road. Another excellent but brief staff report. This is for a discretionary permit.
Oh,
Great.
just before we
Question?
leave that, just a reminder that in the description it says butternut.
Oh yes, yeah. I'll take care of that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Would you like to introduce yourself? Joining us online, real quick. You're on mute for a second.
Can you click OK?
Yes. Just take yourself off mute. Let's see. I might be able to help actually.
Technical issues. Hold on, please.
Okay.
There you go.
Got that? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
My name's Steve Hayes, owner resident of 413 Butternut Road. We are currently attempting to build an ADU on our property. Actually, it's the intended residence. If it makes any difference, my sister and her husband, they currently rent over on 89 Lincoln. The owner didn't renew their lease. They really like the location. I thought we had room. I didn't really have an awareness of the building envelope and open land restrictions that came into being when we subdivided a 2-acre lot for my son and his wife back in 2008, I believe. So we didn't quite have enough room for the building within the building envelope because of basically if we stay within the building envelope, the front porch would be right on the driveway. Aesthetically, you could live with it, but from a snow plowing standpoint, it doesn't work. So we're just looking to bump out a space in the building envelope so we can be within it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously, we're doing an offset on the western border of the property to maintain the existing area of the building envelopes.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Steve. I'm the conservation planner, David Maroney. This is the Williston Conservation Commission. Kim Coleman, Laura Meyer, Dave Westman, Lynn Blevins, and Reed Carr are in attendance today. So I'm going to walk us all through a quick summary of the staff report and the drafted recommended recommendations for the WCC to consider for submitting to the DRB for the October 28th hearing. And feel free to jump in at any point if you have questions or anyone needs clarification or corrections. All right, so you heard a little bit about this project. Lot 1 of the Hayes Division that was subdivided in 2007. And this was prior to the bylaw that required open space to be set aside into a separate lot. So that's why if you look at the staff report, I've overlaid the plan that showed the building envelope, and you see a hashed area that was essentially what is set aside as open space, which today would have been platted into a separate lot. So you can kind of see that more clearly when you look at the parcel.
Steve, know
Right.
what limitations.
Right. And the bottom left corner is that area that was subdivided out for a new lot. Building applicant proposes to modify the building envelope by 3,732 square feet to accommodate the proposed accessory dwelling unit. We'll look at the location. The staff recommendation is simply to have the WCC discuss a more meaningful swap of building envelope in terms of area that might benefit other conservation areas or resources that today would typically be required to be placed into protected open space. So we'll clarify that as we go. As we look at the plan, this is where the proposed ADU is located. So you can see it just bumps out slightly, plus a little bit of buffer around the building into that area that's outside the building envelope. And you get this little proposed bump out that creates the 3,000 square feet on about a 10% grade there. Project history, we just showed a little bit of information regarding the previous development. This parcel is considered a high conservation priority. It's not directly overlapped with the unique natural community area called Grandma Ridge, but it is adjacent to that area. There is quite a bit of significant wildlife habitat area, according to Williston's mapped in the area, which would have been a component of the subdivision and requirement for open space back in 2007. It's noted that there are exemptions from the requirement to have a habitat disturbance assessment conducted. This project qualifies for those exemptions, so it doesn't require additional oversight in terms of wildlife habitat impacts. And those exemptions are listed here. They relate to accessory structures that are permitted, a certain distance from a permitted structure. This accessory structure is, 110 feet from the existing structure to the proposed corner, 160 to the far corner. So certainly seems to fall within that exemption to not require a habitat disturbance assessment. And there's also a clearing threshold exception. There's no uncommon, rare, threatened, or endangered species that be impacted. I mentioned that it's not within the mapped unique natural community. There are farmlands of local importance on site, although they're not proposed to be impacted. There are scenic view sheds on site. They're not proposed to be impacted. There are no special flood hazard areas, etc. Okay, so that just brings us to open space. In order to permit this change of building envelope, the proposal is to accommodate for that, change in 3,700 square feet that would be bumped out from the existing envelope by relinquishing 3,000 feet that's within the existing building envelope. And that's proposed to take place in a narrow strip on the far left side.
Dave, I just have a clarification question here. So this map is everything outside of these red lines is what open space has been designated from the prior subdivision?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So the proposed swap is what exactly?
The proposed swap is
Bump that out.
Right. Bump this out. This becomes area that can be cleared and constructed within.
So that's not the property line. That's the open space.
That's the
development.
exactly the building envelope.
Yep.
And then relinquishing this strip of building envelope on the left side. So in terms of looking at today's open space standards, if you were designing what should go in the open space, we'd be looking at significant wildlife habitat areas that would be the most meaningful towards conservation. So this is where this recommendation came from. The staff Conservation Commission should discuss a more meaningful swap. If we look at the map that let me locate the project area down on Butternut Hill Road. The area of the building that building envelopes is proposed to be relinquished is not particularly meaningful in terms of benefiting conservation. It's a narrow strip on the edge. On the other hand, if you were to overlay that envelope, there are wooded areas of this habitat block that could potentially be looked at to sort of compensate for allowing some additional clearing over here where the building envelope is proposed. So that's a possible conversation starter. And let me jump back to the staff report. Sorry, got a couple things pulled up here. And that's really all there is in terms of relevant components to this staff report. So we included all the findings, just summarizing what we just walked through. And recommendation would simply be whether your direct approval or if a different building envelope swap was recommended, what the location might be.
Laura.
I have one question that I did not see get transferred over onto this bump out, in that the fact that on the original plans, there's a trail easement that goes up the right-hand side. And I was wondering, is that would that still be there? It just goes around that bump out?
That's a fair question. It looks like maybe that didn't make it into the review here.
I think you would see it on what you gave us with the overlay. I think if you have really good eyes.
This is up here. Let's see.
Keep going. It was.
Are you talking about the wildlife aspect of it?
I think the question is if there's a recreational
original
trail easement
Let's see if I can
on
find
the far right
Primitive path.
primitive path.
So if you can tell by the elevation lines, that's a pretty significant ledge along, right where you are. There is no path there. We do have a path basically that we created that just goes up along the brook through the woods. It's just a walking trail. But when you go down, if you go south, you can see that there's a band there. That's where deer come down. We have quite a deer population, unfortunately. And there's a spot, there's like a cut in the ledge where they can go from the upper down to where we are. Actually, I think it's further south. If you go further, oh, you can't really see it on this.
Yeah. Well, what I can do is I can switch over to just looking right here.
That's pretty much all wooded. I don't know why that doesn't look more. Yeah, so right there. That's where that's their travel path. We're really not that close to that.
Can you overlay easements on this map, Dave?
I don't have, unfortunately, that ability.
Can you see that?
Steve, I think I visited your house. Do you have a pig pen by the road?
Yeah, that's back. Gosh, it was originally built.
I can't read that.
We had a single cow and calf. That's what the little hut was built for. It wouldn't pass muster today because it's kind of a wet area. That's what we used it for. The last time we used it was 2021.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's no future plans right now to use that anymore.
Dave, Laura is looking at the original permit that
was shared with the final plans, or
the one that you it's actually the first picture that you superimposed next to the yellow polygon, and it's just the image quality is very low, but it's there's a bunch of text that is not clear if there was a trail easement written into that.
Yeah, okay. It says something trail easement.
How can you see that?
Wow. I have a magnifier on my phone.
Okay, wow, that's very good eyes.
I'm zooming in. And
so what that, I think you're talking about the far
right.
Yeah,
right.
I see that.
So that, I mean, that would be above on top of the ledge.
Not in the building envelope proposed expansion.
Well, it goes all the way down to the road, doesn't it?
Yeah, but this, the where the building envelope is proposed to bump out, I don't think it bumps out as far as the edge of the parcel there. Right, it has to stop short.
It wouldn't interfere with the easement.
But it is worth noting because if you put a house there for your sister, Steve, if a trail were to be implemented along that border of the parcel, it would go relatively close to that new house site.
Well, I think it'd be unlikely you would go at the base of a ledge because that's pretty
Yeah.
much what's out there. If
Yeah.
I was going to do a trail, I think I would do it at the top of the ledge, at which point, you know, the building wouldn't really come into play.
Yeah. Just want to make sure you're aware of that. That you know, if there was a proposal to actually put a trail on the ground, we'd have a conversation about.
I'm sure it does not say.
I'm sure it does.
We would have a conversation about the location and just that would a house being on that eastern edge would be, you know, that's always a consideration, making sure that it's not right behind somebody's house. So.
Okay.
I mean, these easements are generally floating easements, anyways.
Right.
If we can confirm that this does exist, it looks like it just follows the property line.
Yeah, I can zoom in and you can see the property line is over here. This little clearing overlaps with where the bump out ADU. I believe it would have a little bit of additional clearing over here. So if that trail easement exists, and I can confirm that, and it's over by the property, it would be really above on top of that ledge.
Okay.
And let's see if I have.
I want to make a note of time at the 55,
apologies for that.
and
Sorry about
no, that's okay.
No,
Thank
glad
you.
pointed it out.
So I guess does the commission want to have a conversation about a more meaningful swap per the discussion suggestion in the staff report? I feel like I have a pretty good sense of what this project is, but I don't have a sense of whether or not I'd make a recommendation for a more meaningful swap.
But you may not feel that is necessary. Oh.
Yeah, so I would just, in the 5 minutes that we sort of have left, is open. Do people want to have that discussion now, or should we potentially table this for the November meeting, given the time constraints?
why not switch that to the other corner, the proposed extra open space to where it's wooded, just switch it to the other
To the
side.
northeast corner instead of the northwest corner.
Yeah, I agree.
That would make sense to me.
So, for example, Steve, instead of that little strip, could you make a similarly shaped bump out on this corner right there where that stream is?
Is that making sense?
Yeah, honestly, I don't care where it comes from.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just took, it's it was simple to do the strip. But there's no, like, if you're talking where your cursor is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the brook is over there, and you've also got your grade would be a little bit on the steep side.
Right.
But
Yeah, I guess it's kind
I
of.
really don't have any reservations. You can take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I think that would
You
be
wanted to move that?
to the
I-
Conservation Commission.
Yeah, let's just do it. I mean, that's all I have up there. Is just the brook and the woods, and I do pasture that open area that you can see there inside the.
So the sort of point that I would maybe think about is that the bump out as proposed was right next to a property line too, where we have sort of asked that the open space be contiguous with other open space, and so if that swap could be made in that location, then it would be consistent with that precedent of keeping the open space contiguous with each other and not sort of creating this meaningless
Right.
strip
This
on
sort of
the
extra
left.
bit.
Yeah.
And it's just I think it's a little easier to visualize too.
Couple minutes, Kim. We're almost done.
If it more or less corresponds with the wood line. It's just a little easier to understand than, having to look into the property records and understanding that there's this weird little strip on the left side. So that was just a thought. But
No, it's a good thought. I appreciate that you flagged it. I would maybe ask if we can go back to the recommendations. I would just word that a little differently to have it sort of reflect that both that location and reflecting that it's the contiguous to the existing protected open space on that parcel.
Yeah.
I can make a motion if that would be helpful.
Yes, it would be.
So I'll move approval of the proposed building envelope adjustment and with a recommendation that the additional building envelope that is removed to compensate should be at the northeast corner of the building envelope where there's a stream and forest.
And that it's contiguous to the existing.
To remain contiguous with other open space.
Thank you. Perfect. That's what we want to see reflected. Okay, great. Thank you, Reed.
I'll second.
Laura seconds. And we will vote now on that motion as described by Reed. Any questions on the motion, Dave, before we vote?
No,
Excellent.
I think that's clear.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous passes. Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
the conversation, Steve.
That was
Thank
helpful,
you.
and thanks for your flexibility on that, Steve.
Sure. You're welcome.
All right, that's it. Steve, thank you so much for coming. Thanks, Conservation Commission, for your attention and focus. And
Closing at 9 o'clock.
All right.
Meeting's adjourned.
There are 3 couples on Butternut who are named Steve and Catherine.
Is that
wow.
true?
Yes, this Steve and Catherine, their neighbors on the map say Steve and Catherine Parker, and then my cousin is Steve DePasquale and his wife is Catherine, also on
It's a
Butternut.
thing.
All right, Steve, I'm going to end the meeting here and stop the share. Thanks again and have a great day.
Okay, thanks very much. You as well.
Thanks
Bye
for
now.
living on that road.
That's wild.